Let me take you to the exact second I stopped pretending. It was a long oak table, candles lit, her family all dressed up, and me, overdressed, out of place, and holding a wine glass I didn't want. I had just swallowed a dry laugh after one of her uncles made a harmless joke. Something like, they're still acting like newlyweds. You know, the usual filler at family dinners when conversation runs dry. Everyone chuckled, except her. Rena turned to me, eyes cold, voice crisp, and said, "Don't call us a couple. That's ridiculous." No one laughed this time. Her cousin cleared her throat. Someone dropped a fork. I stared at Rena, but she was already buttering her bread like she hadn't just kicked my ribs in front of 10 people. I didn't speak. Because how do you argue with someone who's already decided you're not part of their story? This wasn't a one-off joke. It was the end of the illusion, the tip of the iceberg. And me? I'd been drifting on it like a fool, thinking we were going somewhere warm. That night, I didn't ask her what she meant. I didn't need to. I just started noticing things I had been too afraid to see. And what I found changed everything. The drive home was silent, but not the comfortable kind. It was the kind where silence sits next to you like a witness. The kind where you start realizing how many times you've ignored the obvious just to keep the peace. She hummed along to a playlist she always used when she was in her moods. Jazz. That lazy, floating kind that makes you feel like you're moving underwater. I wanted to say something. Ask her what the hell that comment was about. But instead, I gripped the wheel tighter and stared at the road like it owed me answers. At home, she changed into one of those oversized shirts she knows I like, but didn't even look in my direction. Just scrolled through her phone on the couch while I stood in the hallway, trying to remember when we stopped having real conversations. You know that feeling when you walk into a room and immediately know you're not welcome? That was our living room. My home. I was a stranger there. Later that night, I opened her laptop. No reason. Just impulse. I know it sounds wrong, and maybe it was. But something had been gnawing at me since the dinner. A feeling. A shift. Like I was walking through someone else's dream and pretending it was mine. She had left it unlocked. First tab, a yoga retreat itinerary. Not surprising. Second tab, a private messaging app one didn't recognize, something that wasn't WhatsApp or Messenger. She never told me about it. I clicked. The top conversation was with someone named Lennox. That's not a name you forget. I don't know if it was male or female. There was no profile picture, but the messages. Can't wait to see you again. That dinner tonight was brutal. He's still pretending we're a couple LOL. My blood went cold. No emojis. No softness. Just casual, clinical cruelty. And then another message, time-stamped right after the dinner. He didn't say a word. So predictable. I didn't throw anything. I didn't slam the laptop shut. I just sat there, rereading that line until the words stopped making sense. I didn't even cry. Not yet. That would come later, in a different room, where she couldn't hear it. She had already made her decision. She just hadn't told me. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on the guest room mattress, staring at the ceiling fan as it creaked with every slow rotation, like it too was tired of pretending everything was fine. My brain was chewing itself alive with questions. Who was Lennox? How long had this been going on? Was it physical? Emotional? Or worse, both? I kept hearing her voice in my head. Don't call us a couple. And now that message. He's still pretending. It wasn't just betrayal. It was mockery. Cold, casual mockery. She wasn't torn or conflicted. She was comfortable. And that burned worse than anything. In the morning, she acted like nothing happened. She brewed her coffee, asked if I wanted toast, and then kissed me on the cheek like she hadn't just dissected our marriage behind my back. Her mask was flawless. Not a crack. I watched her walk across the kitchen in her robe, barefoot, humming. And I realized something terrifying. She wasn't afraid of being caught. She didn't think I could do anything. In her world, I was background noise. Static. I told her I was taking the car to get serviced. She nodded without looking up from her phone. Instead, I parked down the street and opened her laptop again. It had synced with her cloud. Her messages were all there. I went through them like I was peeling back skin, every line colder than the last. Lennox had been around for months. I saw plans, hotel names, shared calendar links. There were screenshots of my texts, the ones where I asked if she was okay, if she needed anything, if she wanted to talk. She'd captioned them with crying, laughing emojis. He's like a rescue dog, always eager. I've never felt hate like that before. Not anger. Hate. It wasn't just betrayal. It was humiliation, packaged and delivered like entertainment. But here's the thing, I didn't rage. I didn't storm into the house and confront her. I didn't yell or cry or demand answers. That would have given her more to laugh about. Instead, I made a plan. Because if she saw me as harmless, she wasn't going to see this coming. I didn't eat for the rest of that day. I just sat in my car, engine off, watching the neighborhood go about its innocent routine. A jogger passed by. A kid on a scooter scraped his knee and cried. A delivery van dropped off a package 3 doors down. The world kept spinning, like my life hadn't just hit a concrete wall. Inside me, something new started forming. Not rage. Not grief. It was colder than that. Precise. I realized I had 2 choices. Be the sad, stuttering husband she rolled her eyes at, or become the one thing she never thought I could be, unreadable. So I began my performance. That evening, I came home with groceries. I smiled, kissed her on the forehead, asked if she wanted me to cook or order in. She looked at me sideways for a moment, like I just walked in with amnesia. But she shrugged it off. That's the thing about narcissists. They never suspect the quiet ones of being capable of revenge. They think silence is weakness. I let her believe that. Over the next 2 weeks, I studied her. When she left the room, I checked her calendar. I knew exactly when she'd be gone, when she'd stay late at rehearsal, when she was really with Lennox. I traced every thread of her deception until I could map her whole life without asking a single question. Meanwhile, I gathered what I needed. Copies of texts, hotel receipts she'd foolishly left in her email, voice recordings from when she pocket-dialed me while laughing in someone else's apartment. It was all there, like breadcrumbs to the collapse. And still, I played my role. I complimented her, did the laundry, watched her favorite shows with her, even made a reservation for her birthday at the exact restaurant where she'd toasted me as ridiculous. You'd be amazed how little attention someone pays to you when they think they've won. She floated around the house like she was the star of a film, monologuing about her yoga classes, gossiping about her friends, never once noticing I was documenting every lie like a quiet little historian with a ticking clock in his chest. But there was one thing she couldn't fake. Her guilt didn't exist. There was no hesitation, no regret, and I realized the woman I married was gone. Or maybe she was never real to begin with. Maybe I had built her out of hope, not truth. It didn't matter anymore, because I had a plan, and her performance was about to meet mine. There's something strange about watching someone lie to you when you already know the truth. It doesn't hurt in the way people think it does. It's quieter than that. It's like sitting in a theater where everyone's clapping for the wrong actor, and you're just waiting for the curtain to fall. She came home late again. Sorry, she said, like it was just traffic or time misbehaving. No detail, no apology. Just tossed her keys on the counter, grabbed a drink, and started venting about her coworker as if I'd been waiting all day to hear her opinion about some guy's playlist at the studio. I nodded, smiled, even made a joke that made her laugh. That was the part that hit me the hardest, how easily she could laugh with me while sharing a bed with someone else. But I wasn't chasing confessions anymore. I was collecting proof. And I gathered enough to build a timeline that made her look like a professional con artist. Dates, times, messages, voice notes, overlapping locations. Everything she thought was secret was now sitting in a folder on my encrypted drive labeled her fairy tale. I visited a lawyer. Quietly. No announcements. No dramatic scenes. Just calm, quiet questions. I learned about marital assets, about documentation, about the concept of strategic divorce. The kind where you don't just leave, you win. I didn't care about revenge. I cared about clarity. I wanted to see her face the moment the mirror cracked. I also reached out to someone I hadn't spoken to in months, her best friend, Mira. Mira was loyal to Rena, sure, but Mira had also watched me get humiliated, belittled, and dismissed at countless gatherings. And Mira had once drunkenly said to me, "You deserve better. You know that, right?" I remembered that moment. I remembered it because it was the only time in the past year someone had looked me in the eye and seen the real version of what I was living with. So I asked Mira a question. Off the record, do you know who Lennox is? There was a pause. Then, you know about that? She didn't deny it. She didn't act surprised. That told me everything. Turns out, everyone knew, or at least suspected, except me, her sister, her dance colleagues. Even Rena's own mother had made a cryptic comment once about how some people chase fireworks while others build fireplaces. I hadn't understood it at the time. Now it made sense. They had watched me play house while she played performance art. But I wasn't going to shout, or cry, or post about it. I was going to break the fourth wall and let her audience see the script she tried to hide. It started with an email. From me to her. Subject line, "You and me, reset." The kind of title that sounds hopeful, open-ended. She would click it. I knew she would. Curiosity was her drug. Inside, I wrote a short message about how I wanted to reconnect, that I was thinking of planning a small getaway just for us, a weekend in the mountains, away from the noise. What she didn't know was that every word was bait. Not for her. For the people she'd been lying to as well. I created a private photo album with pictures of us from years ago, mixed with screenshots of her current affair. I layered them. Happy vacation memories. A message from Lennox. A picture of her kissing me at New Year's. A hotel invoice. A note she left me on our anniversary. A recording of her saying, "I'm just tired tonight," followed by a text to Lennox 5 minutes later saying, "You up?" It wasn't rage. It was evidence. Truth, unfiltered. Cold. Undeniable. The link to that album? I included it in the email. Invisible, buried under a smiley face. She'd click it. And when she did, it would track the time, IP, and location. But more importantly, I also sent that same link to 3 people in her circle. Carefully chosen. Her dance studio director, her sister, and Mira. Why? Because the image of Rena she'd spent years curating was starting to collapse. All I had to do was remove one pillar. The rest would fall under its own weight. But I wasn't finished. She came home that night smelling like peppermint and champagne, a scent I used to love. She hugged me from behind while I was at the sink. My body stiffened, not because of hate, but because of how convincing she could still be. Like she hadn't spent the past 48 hours wrapped in someone else's arms, feeding him the same soft laugh she used to give me. "Thanks for the email," she said. It was sweet. Sweet. She had no idea what she'd walked into. I turned, kissed her forehead, and said, "You'll love what I've got planned." And I meant it. Because this wouldn't be an explosion. This would be a quiet detonation, and she'd be the last to hear it. The email detonated in silence. She never mentioned it, not once. No raised voices, no slammed doors. But something shifted. Her phone started leaving the room with her more often. Her screen dimmed quicker. Her expression tightened in the way people's faces do when they sense something they can't explain but instinctively fear. A few days after I sent the link, I noticed she didn't play music during her showers anymore. No humming, no singing, just silence behind the glass. That told me more than a confession ever could. She didn't know who had seen what, or how much people now knew. She just knew something had slipped, and that terrified her. Her sister stopped texting her. Mira went silent too. She asked me if I'd noticed. I shrugged. Maybe they're just busy. She stared at me for a second too long. That was the first real moment of eye contact we'd had in weeks. That was when I knew. She suspected I knew. But she wasn't sure how much. And uncertainty? That's more destructive than proof. That weekend, I gave her a small gift box. No reason. No occasion. Inside was a key. A clean, gold key with a leather tag. She looked confused. "It's for the cabin," I said. "The one you mentioned wanting to visit. I thought we could go." Her eyes scanned my face like she was reading a warning label. Then she smiled, but not the way she used to. There was something mechanical behind it, like a dancer remembering the steps, but forgetting the music. The cabin wasn't real. Not in the way she thought. It was a rented Airbnb 2 hours out, booked under her name, paid with my card. I left the host a note that we'd arrive separately. The plan was simple. She'd drive up early. I'd get delayed. And while she waited for a weekend of fake romance, I'd be meeting with her studio director. With evidence. Because the truth is, her affair wasn't just personal, it breached her contract. Studio policy was clear. Undisclosed relationships with clients or sponsors could result in formal review. Lennox, it turns out, was both. I wasn't going to destroy her. I was just going to stop covering for her while she destroyed herself. But what I didn't expect was how it would feel. Not victorious. Not satisfying. Just heavy. Like carrying someone else's luggage and realizing you've been doing it for years. That night, she curled into me in bed. Like we were still something real. I kept my breathing steady. My arms didn't tighten around her. She didn't notice. She had no idea she was holding a man who'd already let go. She never made it to the cabin. On the morning of the trip, she received an official email from the studio. A review had been triggered based on an anonymous report and attached documentation. I wasn't there to see her read it. I didn't need to be. The damage was done. Not by me. By the truth. Quietly, with dates, times, and her own words. She didn't say anything when she came home that night. She moved around the house like a ghost. For once, she wasn't performing. There were no sarcastic jokes. No distracted kisses. Just long silences and sudden, absent stares. 2 days later, she asked, "Did you send something to my work?" I looked at her and simply said, "I told the truth. You just didn't expect it to speak louder than you." She didn't respond. She just sat down at the kitchen table and cried. Not loudly. Not theatrically. Just a quiet, broken kind of weeping. The kind that doesn't ask for comfort because it already knows it won't come. And I stood there, finally understanding something. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even hurt. I had already grieved. What I felt now was release. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a character in someone else's story. I was writing my own. She moved out 2 weeks later. No fighting. No court battle. She left a handwritten note on the counter that read, "I never thought you'd be the one to walk away first." But I didn't walk away. I just stopped standing still. Now, my life is quiet, but not empty. I go for walks without checking my phone. I sleep through the night. I started volunteering at a shelter, helping cats like the ones I used to feed outside. I even met someone recently. Not romantically, just someone who listens when I speak and doesn't make me feel like a placeholder. Sometimes, the loudest revenge is peace.